Thai boxing fans. We're here in Canastota, New York at the International Boxing Hall of Fame with the former middleweight champion of the world, Kelly the Ghost Pavlik. Kelly, welcome to Canastota and to upstate New York, and tell us how your time here has been so far this weekend.
It's awesome. You kind of know, like, going into it, that this is a big deal, but until you get here and you really realize what's going on and you get around the other great champs and everything else, it's just an honor, and it's been a blast. I'm enjoying the ride.
That's great. It's great to have you here. So this series that I'm doing is called Where Are They Now? And when I heard you were coming up here, I thought, it'd be perfect because it hasn't been a long time, but then when you think about it, you go, wow, it's been, 6-7 years since you were last in the ring. So I thought you fit the bill, and I'm glad you agreed to talk with us. What I like to do is when you're looking to see where somebody is now, I always think it's important to see where they came from and where they started.
Yeah.
And so I just want to ask you, seems like kind of a silly question for anybody that knows anything about boxing in the last 30 years, but how did you get interested in boxing? And yes, you're from Youngstown, Ohio, so.
Yeah, I got interested at a young age. I was in other sports. I was in baseball, football, as a young kid, Pee Wee football. And also the karate movie started coming out, and I wanted to do martial arts. And I started doing the martial arts, and it wasn't enough contact or activity for me. So I wanted to box. And my brothers were going to the boxing gym, and they didn't fight. They weren't doing it competitively. They were just going, that's what they wanted to do. And eventually I kept tugging at my parents wanting to go, and they gave in, they let me go. And from there, I went there and I liked it. And then I sparred shortly after I was there with a kid my age, and he was more experienced than me, and he laid it on me pretty good. And the next day I came home and wanted to pack my bags and go back to the gym and fight him again. I wanted to kick his ass this time. So from that part of it, that point on, it became something I loved doing. I just liked the sport, and I started doing really good at it too at a young age.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, people that live in certain towns, there will be a certain sports team or whatever that is their franchise, and that's why they love that sport. And obviously Youngstown, anybody that's a boxing fan is going to think of Boom Boom Mancini and Harry Arroyo and Greg the Flea Richardson and Jeff Lampkin, and so for such a small place, it's pretty ironic. And now you're, the fifth major world champion to come out of that town. So that, were those guys an influence on you at a young age, or just knowing about them?
Harry Arroyo was, and the reason why I say that is because the first time I walked into the gym to go sign up, there was nobody there. My trainer wasn't there. And the only person in the gym was Harry Arroyo, and I didn't know. I was 9 years old, and I didn't know who Harry Arroyo was. And my mom told me when we left that was the former lightweight champion of the world. It was so, I stayed kind of close with Harry throughout the time because he was in the gym. But no matter, I've never really had in boxing a person who I looked up, whether they're from Youngstown or anywhere. I was just an overall fan of the sport, and I loved watching it. Of course, you had guys like Sugar Ray Leonard, who I thought was, one of the greatest of all time, and Vittorio Gotti, as I started getting a little older and more involved in the sport, and Vittorio Gotti was taking off with his career and having the exciting fights. Obviously Mayweather and things like that. I paid attention to him, and I liked that, So, but I was just more a fan of the sport, more so than having one big idol.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So.
Yep. So obviously you started out in the amateurs and you won some accolades and won some big tournaments, and you made it all the way to the 2000 Olympic trials where you met up with Jermain Taylor. Now, I'm not sure at what stage in the trials you met him, or if it was to the finals or whatever, if you can elaborate on that, but tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I had a very short time in the open division. I came literally right out of Junior Olympics at 16, and I fought in a handful of open tournaments, and I qualified still, even with being that young, for the Olympic trials by winning the U.S. champion, or coming to second in the U.S. championships. But I think Anthony Hanshaw, who won that, already had qualified to another tournament for the Olympic trials. So however it worked out, I ended up fighting in the Olympic trials. The first night I fought Darnell Wilson again, who was at that time really the top rated junior middleweight in nationals, and I beat him, because I beat him in the U.S. championship, so I beat him in the trials. Then the second night I fought Taylor, and it was a good fight. I mean, it really was a good fight. Taylor definitely won that fight, and I think that the experience at that time, he was 23, Had a lot of amateur fights.
Yeah.
I was.
You were only 18?
Yeah, 17.
Or wait,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, 17.
Yeah, that's right. Probably before your birthday.
And I was only in an open division for 3 tournaments, and he did what he was supposed to do, and then we turned around and I had a bye, and then I fought Hanshaw because it was a 2-fight elimination.
Okay.
And Hanshaw, that was one of the reasons why I turned pro, because I beat Hanshaw. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I was up on the scorecards going in the last round. They come in the corner, they give you the score. I was up 10-7 going into the last round, and we went to war in the last round. And I actually buckled him and everything else. And I came back and I didn't get 1 point. And he ended up beating me, I think it was like 13-10. So that right there kind of was like my reasoning after that tournament why I wanted to turn pro. Cameron Duncan and Top Rank were interested. Mm-hmm. And to stick around 4 years for something like that to happen again, so that was one of the reasons. But that was the amateur career. The open division, I wasn't there long at all. I signed a contract actually at 17, turned pro, and then shortly after I graduated in June, I had my pro debut.
So you were with Top Rank from the get-go?
Yes.
And they were interested in you from your amateur days?
Yep. We had numerous, Duva was interested and a handful of other promoters, but Top Rank stood out, at that time. Still to this day, I think was the best choice I made.
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if it went fast for you, but in 5 years and 26 fights, you were in line for the NABF title for your first regional belt, a pretty important belt, and you fought Fulgencio Zuniga. You stopped him in 9 rounds. Was that the fight? Was that like the defining fight in your career where you realized as a pro, you know what, I can be championship caliber, or was it before that, or were you always of the mindset I'm trying to go all the way in this, to become a world champion?
I was in that mindset. I mean, don't get me wrong, Zuniga was a tough fighter, and that was a good fight, actually. And at that point, no, I mean, I knew, I'm realistic, and I still am to this day. And I knew that there was a lot more to do and a lot more to work on if you're going to get to that level. Being at that level and at the NABF levels, that's why they have the NABF title. But the whole thing was I worked after that fight. We went back to the drawing board on a lot of things and kept improving over as time went on. And you see the fights, the Bronco McCart fights and everything like that. I did what I was supposed to do, where other contenders were having a hard time. But at that point, I thought that I wanted to be a little further along in my career. Actually, the big thing was it took me 7 years to get on HBO.
Mm-hmm.
Being undefeated, having a high knockout ratio along with that,
mm-hmm.
and so there was a lot of frustrating points. To keep staying undefeated that long and put up that type of record that I was putting up was kind of frustrating at a point too.
Yeah. So you were fighting quality guys though during that time, and you were then eventually matched in the WBC Eliminator against Edison Miranda, who was at that time had a reputation, a monstrous puncher, and most people thought he should have been the IBF champ against Arthur Abraham, but he got DQ'd. What were your thoughts going into that fight against a guy like with his reputation? I know guys like Mike Tyson were saying, and he was taught when he was young, a fighter always has fear, but it's how you handle it and what you do with it. Was he an intimidating guy, or were you just kind of within yourself and not worried about it?
No, he was. But in that fight, that was a game plan. I had the high knockout ratio also, and I knew I could hit.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So going into that fight, we broke down a lot of film. Miranda couldn't fight going back, and it was very few times that we were able to catch on film Miranda actually going back. You know what I mean? Because he was always the one who was just stronger and kept pushing people back. And we broke down the film, and we seen that he, if you didn't let him plant on that back foot, he didn't have that much power. And it was just easier to fight that way. You could dance around or stay away from his punch, but he threw punches from different angles, and now you're in the danger zone of getting caught with something you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
So we said going into that pretty much I said, let him worry about my power.
Mm-hmm.
I know I got a good chin. Let him worry about what I'm going to bring. I know he hits hard. I don't think he knows how hard I hit and how strong I am. Mm-hmm. And we showed it in that fight. He was superior as far as strength-wise. But he lived up to everything that was rumored about him, though.
Yeah.
I mean, Edison Miranda could hit.
Yeah.
You know, very, very hard. And, you know, it's weird how that happens. Like, all his credit was taken away after I beat him like that. You know, but Edison Miranda was a dangerous fighter and was the most feared fighter for a reason.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned just a moment ago that you had a good knockout record, too. But you said, I knew I had a good chin.
Yeah.
And that's what some people question about punchers is, well, we know he can punch, but can he take a punch?
Yeah.
Now, did you know that from the gym or from having gotten caught in a few fights where you said, wow, I should have gone down, but I didn't. I guess I have a good chin?
Getting caught in a couple fights before that where most guys would have gone down. Yeah, you know, so that they give you a little bit, but you realize in that fight, you realize in the second round when you get hit with one of his clean punches that put other people out, that like shit, you know, and it didn't really faze me in that, and that's where you see me. I kept walking right back into it, you know, and I was backing him up. A lot of punches I got, you know, I picked off in that fight. Unfortunately, I think the fourth or fifth round though, I caught like 3 clean straight right hands in a row. I said that wasn't. I didn't plan on doing that, but I really realized at that point too, though, I had a good chance. So.
So that fight was an official WBC eliminator, and by this time, your old amateur foe Jermain Taylor had 2 of the belts, well 3 if you count the Ring Magazine, the lineal title, and there was Arthur Abraham with the IBF, and Felix Sturm with the WBA. I know a lot of fighters say, you know, I leave that up to my promoter, my management team, but you know. What was the mindset in going for Jermain? Was he the more marketable? Was it because he was in the States and didn't want to go over to Germany? Or what was behind that?
Well, because Jermain beat the man to become undisputed for a short period of time, champion. He was by far the biggest name, you know, and that's who I wanted to fight. You know, he was the legit middleweight champion. Abraham shouldn't have been world champ still because I thought Edison Miranda beat him. You know, if that fight didn't happen where it happened, you're talking about a totally different outcome.
Right.
I thought, you know, Sturm and Abraham were handed their titles pretty much.
Yeah.
If you go back and think about it, Taylor vacated them, and they picked them up.
Vacant, yeah.
So, you know, right there, I beat Miranda, who beat Abraham, and that's how I look at it. So yeah, Taylor was the biggest fight, and then it comes down to also, yeah, it does come down to the promoters with the other fights, because after I beat Taylor, I wanted those. I wanted Sturm. You know, I wanted the other belts for a trophy case, and but it is, you know, those fell apart. They don't want they wanted us to go over to Europe and fight, and I knew that the only way you get a decision over there is if the guy literally kind of leaves in a body bag out of the ring. You know, even if you knock him out, they'll find a way for them to still win. So it's horrible to put it that way, but that's the way it is. And Top Rank was very smart. I mean, they knew too. Like, why would I have to go over there to fight them when I'm the lineal champ?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, if anything, them guys are going to have to come over here and fight.
Now, so going back to the Olympic trials fight with Taylor, that had to be a little bit in the back of the mind, like a revenge. Was it kind of like a selling point? I know they talked about it a little bit in the build-up that you guys had met at least once before. And was that like just a little personal thing in your mind? Besides, I mean, obviously the titles is big potatoes, but was that kind of like a little small potatoes in the background?
No, it was something big. I mean, no matter who tells you what, man, they're full of shit. Like, that's in your head. Like, he fucking beat me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he beat me, and I knew he beat me. But at the same time, I also put in my head too that I was only 17 years old. I wasn't polished yet. He had the man maturity over me. He had the experience over me. And you're talking 7 years later. That's a big difference. You know, now I'm a grown man, and there ain't no excuse. And I had the strength, and I'm mature, and I got the experience. It's going to be a different fight, and it's also a longer fight. You know, it's a long run now. It's not a sprint anymore.
Right.
So Jermain was notorious for kind of starting to fade in the middle rounds towards the later rounds. I knew my conditioning and my training regimen was phenomenal, and that would lead that I had the advantage in that part of it. And the same thing coming off the Miranda fight, I knew my power. Like, he's going to have to stand up to the relentless pressure and power. You know, the entire fight, and he couldn't do it.
So there's been other matchups in big fights. Shane Mosley and Oscar De La Hoya had met at an even younger age than you were, you know, and a lot of people say, that was amateurs, they were kids, you can't take anything from that fight. when preparing for this fight. Was there anything that you took or had memories from that fight that you thought about, or did you just kind of study the current Taylor at that time, with tapes and everything, and not even think about how the first fight went and what you could have done and what he did?
So, two different worlds. Amateur boxing and professional fighting is two different things, completely. So, there was nothing that was taken from the amateurs besides the fact that he beat me. We watched the recent films and what he has done in his career. We watched fights when he fought taller guys, 5'11" and taller, how he fought them, and we worked off that. That was a big thing. But no, you don't ever want to take anything from the amateurs.
Yeah. So the match is made. You're in the ring with him. The fight's going along, and you find yourself on the deck in the second round. I don't quite remember, but I think there was, talk about how you kind of got up grinning.
Yeah.
And what was going through your mind at that time, and how did you, maintain your composure and not kind of lose it mentally and fall apart to come back and stop him in the
It's
seventh?
kind of like, what's his name? Asked me at the end of the fight, Merchant.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him, I was like, oh shit, it's going to be a long night. He asked me what was going through my head.
Right.
It was an equilibrium shot. And I do remember Smoger in the locker room before the fight saying, as long as you show me that you're trying to hold back, that you're trying to survive, that you're with it enough, I'm not going to stop the fight. People say that most other referees would have stopped it. I really don't see, besides, I was running around the ring, losing my legs, but
Right.
I was grabbing, I would hold on, and then when we got in the clinch, the big part, I was punching. You know what I mean? I was hitting them. And I think Smoger knowing too, you can see each time that I grabbed on that my legs were under me more and I was hitting harder, you know what I mean? And it was coming back. But I was fortunate, but in my head I was there mentally, just the legs were gone. And I knew if I could get past that round, I knew I was going to win the fight.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's crazy. I'm not just saying it because I got past that round and I won, but I knew that if I get past that second round that the fight was mine. And if you go back and watch the third round, I came back and threw like 98, 99 punches in that round.
Mm-hmm.
And that zapped everything out of Jermain. Not only did the second round, him trying to get me out, zap him, but I just took his whole confidence level in that third round.
Mm-hmm. Now, you won the title, and you ended up, your next fight was a rematch, but it was over the weight. Were you kind of pissed that it wasn't a title defense? Did you care about it, being an overweight fight, or what was going on with those negotiations and all that?
No, that was the stipulation before the first fight. You know what I mean? That was the agreement. So I had a world title shot. I wasn't going to blow it because of 4 pounds. Fuck, it's 4 pounds. So I agreed to it, and I didn't make no bitch about it after either. That's what I agreed to. I signed the contract. If you know my career, I didn't care about weight. I don't know too many people that I fought middleweight. I defended my title. Only 2 fights after, I jumped up to light heavyweight to fight an all-time great, and then come back down to middleweight to defend it against a very tough fighter in Rubio.
Right.
You know what I mean? So. That fight being at 64, it just meant that I could eat a little bit more for a fight.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So I gave him. The great thing about that fight is, too, nobody gave me a chance in that one. The only way I had a chance was if I knocked him out again. That there was no way that I was going to outbox Jermain Taylor. Or if that fight went 12 rounds, that I was going to get the decision. And I proved wrong again on that one. So,
So you mentioned, you went up to light heavyweight to fight an all-time great in Bernard Hopkins. Talk a little bit about that fight and the mindset going into it as far as targeting him as an opponent. It was arguably the biggest name in your career. He's definitely going to be a Hall of Famer. Was it like a scout you wanted on your resume at that time to have Hopkins?
definitely. Well, the fight fell through with Paul Williams, which was nothing I had nothing to do with. And then the next time, I think, was with staph infection. I wanted to fight Paul Williams. Why would I not want to fight him? Welterweight, going up to middleweight. Of course, I took the backlashing that I was ducking Paul Williams. And for the life of me, I don't know why I would duck fighting a welterweight coming up just to jump up 2 weight classes to light heavyweight.
Right.
You know, next fight. So with that Hopkins fight, there was nothing that I didn't want to jeopardize anything with that fight, and every misfortunate thing that could happen, and I didn't say it after the fight because I know I would get hit with the excuses, but every misfortunate thing that could happen in a camp happened. Yeah, you know, I sparred a total of 4 times the entire camp. You know, my elbow is still screwed up from it, and actually I got some. You can put it in there if you guys want to buy the book. I don't know if you know who Thomas Hauser is.
Yes.
Thomas Hauser don't lie about anything.
Mm-hmm.
He writes the truth, and sometimes that's what people don't like, is that he's truthful.
Yes.
And he was in my locker room for the entire couple of my world title fights, but he was in there for the Hopkins fight.
Okay.
And I have the article from the book that he just released not too long ago. And I'll send it to you. You could somehow, if you could attach it. I don't want to scroll through my phone right now.
Sure.
And look at it, but just it wasn't an 80% night. It wasn't an 80% Pavlik. And with that being said, unfortunately, to have a night like that against all people, I don't want to take anything away from Hopkins.
Right.
You know, Hopkins he's fucking that good. You know, at that time, you know, that was 10 years ago, and Hopkins was beaten. I know he was a little older, and I was hoping on that too. You know, that was my mindset. Like, this guy's old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, this should be. I should be able to figure something out in this fight, and he wasn't though, and he showed that for a couple of years after I fought him. But just unfortunately, of all things to come with that, you know, that was against him.
Yeah.
You know, the guy that's smart, that technical, and with the defense that he had the most underrated defense. I still believe, you know, and that's who I fought.
Mm-hmm. So, you came out on the short end of the stick with that one. You were still the middleweight champ, so you went back to middleweight to defend your title. You had a couple more defenses, and then Sergio Martinez came up from light middleweight up to middleweight. And did you have issues going into that fight? I mean, Southpaw was what's your take on that fight
don't know,
this many years later?
Whatever the rumors will be on that one, that was another one that was well documented. Actually, if you go back and watch the fight, you hear the announcers, you know, the weight issue on that one. The issue with that one that came in, and again, you know, I don't give a shit if people say excuse or not. You know, these are all documented things. The commentators have talked about how hard it was for me to make weight. I believe it was the first time they've seen that many workout equipments in somebody's hotel room.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But it was that a situation to this day I still think about, like, should I have come in a pound over, or a pound and a half over? And like a lot of guys do, I say screw it. Strip me because it's my last fight at middleweight anyways.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because I'm definitely not going to be able to make middleweight no more. And then, of course, the part of me, I was against that, so I didn't want to be a hypocrite. And we struggled to make weight. I mean, it was horrific, and I know for a fact, 100%, not really trying to take too much away from Martinez, but you see that I was ahead going into the 9th round of that fight. Mm-hmm. And I hit the wall. I mean, even if I wasn't cut, I don't think that I would have won that fight. You know what I mean? It was just one of them things that I was there lung-wise, like cardio-wise, I was there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I wasn't a bit tired, but my body just hit that wall. You know what I mean? And there was nothing I could do on it. And again, it is what it is. He was a great fighter, taking nothing away. I mean, you seen it at the beginning of the fight when I was feeling good. He won some of those early rounds. You know, just out of pure talent.
Right.
You know, being a good fighter. So that's why I'm saying I ain't taking nothing away from Martinez. But you've seen in the middle rounds where I overcame that and where I figured it out and was beating him to the punch. And unfortunately, though, it is what it is.
Yeah.
You know?
So you knew going into that fight, making the weight or not, that you weren't going to stay at middleweight anymore?
That was it. Yeah, that fight, everything about that fight, that whole camp, you know, with the weight, because it's weird. Like we had it down packed with fights. All the way up to that fight, like the last couple started getting hard. Lockett was getting hard, you know, Gary Lockett fight. But we would have it almost down to a science, and then usually we go to bed the night before the weigh-ins, like a pound, maybe a pound and a half overweight, and we always knew that we were going to sleep off minimum a half a pound. And that fight, we went to bed about 3.5 pounds over, first of all, and woke up actually a pound heavier. Yeah. So the whole entire morning, we couldn't sweat much anymore. So we didn't do the sauna because it was just actually hurting me more so than anything. There was nothing in me because we were dried out so long. I couldn't get a bead of sweat, so it was just a constant treadmill, stationary bike, all morning. I mean, very minimal breaks because we had no time, and we made the weight barely.
Yeah. So you came up on the short end of the second half fight. You lost your title. You took some time off, about a year and a month, I think, when you decided to come back. Was that just kind of trying to come back from the letdown, or was it by design, or were you trying to figure out, do I even want to continue, or what was behind that length of time off?
Probably what the latter you said. At that point, I was kind of losing it. I ain't gonna lie, like I was losing
the interest.
The interest. Yeah. I always said that I didn't want to stay pro long. You know what I mean? And I had a good team, a solid team around me, and still do. So I knew that I was going to be good financially, and I had the belts that I dreamed about getting. I don't know, after that it was hard. It was just to get
to have your heart in it, and your head in it.
Yeah, there's just a lot of things that came along with it, and a lot of fighters are like that. You know what I mean? Garcia was one of them. Robert Garcia, my late trainer, towards the end. And certain fighters, they're done after that. They just want their titles, and that was kind of me for a while there. And then I ended up, at that point, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I started having a little too much fun. Outside the ring.
Yeah.
And I say fun, and it was immature shit. And then it came back to I want to do it. You know what I mean? I'm gonna at least give it one more go. And then that's we ended up getting a fight, kind of last minute notice on the opponent.
Right.
But it was
Alfonso Lopez. Yeah.
But it was what it was, and it was at a higher weight. We actually went above super middleweight just to kind of test out because of my frame, my height. And we went up a little higher than super middleweight again in that fight. And I thought, I did really well in that fight. Awkward fight, tough fight. Tougher than expected, and then after that, it was time to change a lot of things.
Yeah,
it really was, just all around, and that's what we ended up doing. Making that move with Garcia.
So do you attribute, the difficulties in that fight with just being at, I assume maybe you're the heaviest weight you'd ever fought at professionally, the layoff, the coming off some of the fun, and just and where your head and heart were at mentally? Was it what percentage Kelly Pavlik was in that fight?
Probably a little bit of everything, but again, everybody always dwells on the fun part.
Yeah.
And fighters do it.
Yeah. Everybody does it. Fighters or non-fighters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I think it was a little bit of everything. You know what I mean? But mainly the layoff was big. It truly was. And then I also think just the training. To be honest with you, I think
your regimen wasn't the same.
Yeah, getting ready, just preparation for it. But ring rust was a big thing too. And I went in against a kid who probably fought the fight of his life that night, and should I have beaten him a little more convincingly? I definitely, you know what I mean. But it was just, and there was nothing that I felt good enough. I was in great shape for that fight overall, and it was a bad night. And I think that's after that fight we knew something had to change.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, Sean O'Grady, the former champ, always used to say, boxing is 10% physical and 90% mental.
Yeah.
And perhaps your mental game, and like you said, with all these things swirling around, there wasn't 90% of the mental to put into that, where you were at your career at that time.
Yeah, and it wasn't just us. It was more so, Top Rank was the one who wanted to change too. They Top Rank wanted to change from the beginning. Beginning of my career, and I didn't.
Right.
I was comfortable. I don't think I made the wrong choice. You know what I mean? Because we ended up winning the world title and everything, and it was a great run. But again, at that stage, now you're looking at 11 or so years later in the career. I just thought, it wasn't going to hurt anything to change it up at that point. You know what I mean?
So you had 3 more fights after the Alfonso Lopez fight, all wins, so total of 4 wins, and you were at a point of 40 wins and 2 losses, and you were 30, and you were still winning. And so what happened? Was it a gradual fade? Was it, you know what, I'm done?
It was gradual. It was almost just about, like I said before, the Lopez fight. You know, kind of just carried along. I got to California, and I got to say, it was fucking great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It was awesome. Robert Garcia, what I learned, the camp, everybody out there, it was very comfortable. The hospitality was amazing for me coming from Ohio all the way to a place where I'd never even stepped foot in this gym before, just looking at it, let alone training there and living out there. And we got Aaron Jaco the first fight, and I knew, like, okay, Aaron Jaco, understandable. I'm with the new trainer and everything else. Then after that, we got Scott Sigman. Taking nothing away from Scott Sigman, great. He's a great person. You know, I like Scott. I'm friends with him to this day. But it's Scott Sigman in boxing. You know what I mean? What I mean by that is it's not a Hopkins, Rubio, Taylor, guys like that. And then after that, it was a Will Rosinski. You know, so I understand it was a progression, and those fights all happened back to back to back. And at that point, though, usually when you up and leave your hometown, that's at the beginning of a career. You know, like when you're looking to make the money, looking to win the world title belts, and you don't have a family or a young kid. Very rare do you see a guy after 12 years up and, you know, leave across country and leave the family while he has money and the belts. So that was getting hard, and it was really about done at that point. I was. And the Andre Ward fight was in talks, and it was actually very close to being signed. And I got, you want to talk about a resurrection of me wanting to fight again. And I was 100% for that. Andre Ward's a phenomenal, obviously, all-time great fighter. And I was pumped just to have an opportunity to fight him and get back in the ring with him, guys. Whether people think I got my ass whipped or not. You know what I mean? It was just an awesome opportunity. And unfortunately, he had that shoulder injury. You know, he had the surgery and everything else, and there was no meaningful fight out there. There was no other fights. I think the Super 6 was still going on. There was no big name again. At that point, I was done. I just said, I'm done. I don't want it.
So either before you said you're done or any time afterwards, was there a plan for life after boxing, or was boxing still going to have some sort of role in your life? Or
boxing will always, yeah, and that's how I felt. You know what I mean? Boxing still is. I still, you know, I have a podcast show now that's taking off pretty good. You know what I mean? And we get great guests on there, and I'm at the fights now. I bought a fitness gym, and I got boxing involved with that. And now I plan on, hopefully by winter, opening a nice big boxing gym in Youngstown. Those are my plans, to be a part of boxing, because that's what I've done my entire life. So I knew that too, even at that point. I was done though. I got done with it. I didn't have to worry about training. I didn't worry about shit, really.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Honestly, I didn't do anything for 3 or 4 years, and I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Truly.
Yeah.
You know, I'm 30 years old. I could retire.
Yeah.
I could sit in my yard all day long and do whatever the hell I wanted to do, and that's how I felt. And I did it. And then last year and a half, 2 years, it was time to, start getting active again, busy, get involved in things, and I did.
So was the doing whatever the hell you wanted, was that a case of, being who you always were outside the ring, or was it a case of getting a chance to do what you wanted that maybe you missed? Like sometimes, let's say child actors or whatever, they they didn't have a childhood or a youth or prom or whatever. Did you feel like you were gonna spend some time and do some of the things you always wanted to do?
Exactly. I talked to a lot of fighters about it, and actually the other night with a couple of guys here that are still fighting, it was actually laughable because talking about amateurs, I was busting tables for my high school's prom. They were all coming in and I'm busting tables, and even as a pro, the amateurs are things you missed, pro, what you miss, you know what I mean? And then early on in my career, the money wasn't that great still, and then my wife got pregnant, and I was working. I was going to do construction jobs, tearing shingles off a roof, rolling grass, doing landscaping, and milling solder and everything else. And it just cow manure, grass seed all day long, and then going to the gym. I would go run in the morning, go to work, especially from the roofing. We get done with that, go to the gym, and then go do my regular, finish up that nighttime. You know what I mean? That was to get by until the big fights started coming. So a lot that was missing. Yeah, it was. I felt like I was free.
Yeah.
And it's weird. I'm not the
From
the only
something
fighter.
you loved, but you were free.
Yeah, because it was a job. It truly was. I trained 6-7 hours a day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and then that wasn't including breaking down film and everything else. So that's what it was to me. And after, shit got, the rumors were fucking, it's amazing. I'm the most interesting man ever to live. I should have a commercial, but I stayed busy with my kids. We were active in certain things, and again, like I said, I lived my life like how I wanted to. You know what I mean? Like, there was nobody going to tell me I was done.
So here now, 2018. Where's Kelly Pavlik now? Spiritually, physically, mentally, financially? Where's he at?
Good. Enjoying. Still enjoying it, and actually I'm involved in what I want to be in, and I have a podcast radio show that's doing very well. The Punchline with Kelly Pavlik and James Dominguez. We're traveling to covering these fights, all the big fights and everything. That's fun. Like I said, I bought a fitness gym, and I do box fit classes out of it, but it's all around for sports. And then, the big one is going to be the boxing gym. Coming to this event, things like that. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying to be able to, with how hard I worked in my career, to do things like with my gym that I own. I go in, I don't have to answer to nobody. I go home when I want to, go home when I want to, and do what I want there. Podcast, I set the times when I want to do it. So I'm not under the role of anybody, and it's great to know that, to see what I worked for has paid off. You know what I mean? And I can live life and be active. I've always done charitable events and still do them, and it's all under the radar. I keep it under the radar because I don't need the notoriety from it.
Right.
And everything's going good now. I mean, it's just came a point there, like, again, I talked to you about it earlier. I got shit for petty things, and it really was. And if anybody says different on that, then they're fucking assholes looking for shit to start. You know what I mean? It was kid stuff, and I should never had any attention brought to it. But at the same time, I should have realized that comes with the territory.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And you were a big fish in a little bowl.
Exactly, and it was childish shit too. It really was. So now it's like time to sit back, and I'm still having fun. You know what I mean? And enjoy it and be mature about things. And that's where I look at it now. Like, I just want to. I'm always competitive. I want to have the best things. I want to have the best gym. I want to eventually start training guys and train the best fighters, if that's possible, and enjoy what's going on now. Reap the benefits.
That's what I wanted to ask, if you wanted to actually have an active hand in training, and if so, is there a sense of kind of taking what you learned over the years and paying it forward to the next generation of kids or young fighters?
Yeah, because I learned a lot. I learned a lot from my trainer, Jack Lowe. I learned a lot from a short period of time with Robert Garcia. I've learned on my own just through all the experience and the top guys that I fought in the amateur background. And then obviously now being in the media field, I cover fights all the time. That's part of my job now. As you got to do the same thing, and it is fun because I'm doing what I want, and you learn. So yeah, I want to give back. I don't want to be a manager. Don't want to be a promoter yet. Unless,
You did have your hand in it a little bit. You had
I
the
did.
Ghost Promotions, and you did a show in 2011.
Yeah.
With a couple other promoters together.
Yeah, well, me and Jack.
Yeah.
And it was a nice show. It was actually a really nice show. I didn't lose on it. It turned out good, but right now I don't. There's a lot more behind promoting than what people think. There's a lot more to it. So no, I think I'd have fun, training the guys and running my gym, and again, being a part of that. And that keeps you in shape too when you own your own gym.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. What would you say? Obviously, you reached the pinnacle. You won a world championship. Highest point you can in your career. Do you feel fulfilled with your career, and are there any regrets at all?
No, I go back on those fights. If we could have done something different with the fights, if I would have postponed the Hopkins, I would have been blasted for that. You know what I mean? So people bought tickets for it, and there was nothing we could do about that. I wouldn't change it. For me to sit here right now and say I had 2 losses, and the 2 losses that I had were against those guys, I'm not going to bitch. You know what I mean? So again, it was a learning experience. I believe everything happens for a reason. So no, there's nothing in my career that I would change. I'm comfortable how it went, and 40-2 with 34 knockouts. Nothing to be ashamed of. A 3-year run as champ also, and it was good. I wouldn't change anything.
That's great. In closing, what would you like to say to fans of the Ghost that haven't heard from you and wondering what you've been up to?
Oh, well, nothing. Just doing my thing. I appreciate them being fans. If they want to, I don't know if I can plug my show or.
Yes, you certainly can.
Oh, thank you. They tune into the Punchline with Kelly Pavlik and James Dominguez, and the easiest way to get to it is just go to punchline.live, and it'll pull up our website with old shows and the new ones that are coming out. It's every Tuesday. We're Facebook Live also. Other than that, that's all I'm doing, and I appreciate the support for those who still do it. I appreciate you. Great interview, and that's about it.
Kelly, thank you for your time. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you back here on that stage getting inducted perhaps someday.
That would be nice. It would be nice.
All right. Thank you for your time.
No problem.